Welcome. So I first heard this track during Adriatic's set at their own event called X, and I just loved the melody, and I just thought I would just like to create it to see exactly what's going on. So firstly we'll start with the actual programming of the melody, and then we'll actually go into the sound design. So what makes this melody great is that it has a structure to it. Firstly, it sticks to a rhythm. Then it has repetitiveness to give familiarity, and it helps people remember the melody in this repetition here. It also doesn't get too repetitive or boring because it moves its fundamental note what it sits on. And also adding to this is the bass underneath gives it a different harmony, even though it's on the same note here. It's actually a different harmony because it's a different bass now. Also, the melody has an element of surprise to it with these notes. You would expect them to land on the bar here. But with this coming early gives that element of surprise. And a little bit of spice to the melody. And finally, it uses velocity to give more of a human feel in certain areas of the melody, so it's not just static. Right, let's get into the sound design. Eliminate all the effects. And start with an initial preset. So this sound just consists of one single oscillator, which is a saw wave, and I thought the basic MCB sounded right for this sound, with the level down to just below 40% and the master down below 40%. Enable the filter for the noise and the oscillator. Now we'll go down to the amp envelope, move the decay to around 500. The release up to about 600. Make sure to change the slope to like an S shape here. Change the cutoff to a MG low 24, low pass 24 pole. Change the cutoff to about 11 o'clock. Add the drive to 24%, 25, 26. Remove the resonance. Next, we'll apply an envelope to the filter amount, the cutoff amount. About 16 will do. Move the decay down to around about 400 and the sustain to about 46%. Then move the release up to around about 700 and change again the slope of this envelope to more of an S shape. Now let's add an LFO to the phase of the oscillator, put it in a sine format, and then also add it to the fine tune as well. Both of these give like a sort of analog feel with a little bit of movement to the pitch. But we just want a tiny little amount. You can even reduce the amount in this matrix section to even less. Now we're going to add some noise. It sounded like this had a little bit of noise in the background of this sound, so I went with the inharmonic 6 as shown. I thought this needed about just over a quarter maybe. And then pitch up to about 90% for this one. Let's have a listen how it sounds so far. Obviously a while off, but still got a little bit to go. So add the velocity to the level of the oscillator as shown. So the harder you press your key, the louder the synth will be. Also add the velocity to the cutoff amount. Now I've added a macro to the cutoff as well to automate that later. Then this is the main section which gives the sound, I think its character is portamento just before 12, mono so it only plays one note at a time, and then glides to always, so every single note it slides up into the note instead of landing on it. This sounds nice even when the filter re-triggers, it still glides up to that note. Finally, let's add its only in-house effect, which I've added is a filter just to cut off the lows, make it a little bit thinner sort of sounding. And then a boost 12 dB at 4 kHz gives it that bite. Finally, let's do some automation just to open up that filter a little bit as it's opening in that build on the main song, just to give more context. Before we get into processing, I need to mention the most important button of the sound design tutorial, which is the subscribe button. It would mean a lot if you pressed it, and it would help me do more videos like this and make more music as well. Right, let's get on to processing. Right, so in processing, I firstly added some overdrive just to give it a little bit more bite again. Tiny bit of compression, but this isn't really doing anything. Some EQ just to shape the sound more into the original sound. A tiny little bit of very short reverb. I've also got a send of reverb going to this 1 second reverb. Both the reverbs have been EQ'd to reduce too much harsh reflections and also too much muddy reflections. Some saturation, gentle saturation. Some expansion on the top just to get more bite into the sound with Pro Q. And finally I've added a reverb, but just in the tops, just to give the top end a little bit more ring. Right, now let's hear the final comparison. I think that's close enough to me. If you would like the MIDI files for the bass and the lead, and also the patches with all the processing, I've made a Google Drive file which you can grab through my Patreon link. I'll put that in the description. It would help a lot if you could either subscribe to my Patreon or to the YouTube to make more tutorials like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.